Imagine this. One of gospel music's most powerful voices, Leandria Johnson, finds herself in handcuffs yet again. Fans who once saw her as unstoppable are left stunned, asking the same burning question: what went wrong this time? The story behind her latest arrest isn't just about trouble with the law. It's about the shocking cycle she can't seem to break. What came out has everyone talking, and the truth might be even harder to believe than the headline. It happened fast. The kind of moment that doesn't feel real until you see the flashing lights and hear the sharp sound of handcuffs clicking shut. For fans of Leandria Johnson, the gospel singer who once brought people to tears with her raw, soulful voice, the news of her arrest felt like a punch in the gut. The story spread in minutes, hitting social media like wildfire. One second people were sharing clips of her powerful performances, and the next they were passing around headlines about her being taken into custody. Again, witnesses say it was surreal to see. She wasn't standing on a stage belting out words of faith. Instead, she looked exhausted, weighed down by something bigger than herself as officers moved in. The whole scene was a jarring contrast to the image so many had of her: a woman in church clothes, leading choirs and lifting spirits. It was as if two worlds collided: the world of the gifted gospel star and the world of a woman struggling to keep her life in control. What struck people most was how familiar it all felt. This wasn't the first time Leandria had found herself in this kind of spotlight, and that's what made it even more shocking. There's a kind of heartbreak that comes with watching someone you admire make the same mistake again, as though the lessons from the past never sank in. Fans were left asking the same painful questions. How did it come to this? Why did she put herself in that position? And most of all, what happens next? The police, of course, treated it like another day on the job, but for those who knew her story, it was anything but ordinary. Leandria isn't just another name in a police report. She's someone who fought her way out of poverty, who sang her truth on national television, who once seemed destined to become a legend in gospel music. That's why the sight of her being led away felt heavier, like more than just a legal problem. It felt like a tragedy unfolding in plain view, one that no song could cover up. Every arrest tells a story, and this one was loud. It spoke of struggles behind closed doors, battles with pressure, and the crushing weight of expectations. For now, though, all anyone could do was watch, scroll through the headlines, and try to reconcile the woman they cheered for with the woman in the mugshot. It was shocking, yes, but even more than that, it was sad. When news broke that Leandria Johnson had been arrested again, many fans weren't just shocked, they were reminded of a pattern they had seen before. This wasn't the first time her name had been tied to headlines that had nothing to do with her music. Over the years, her journey has been marked not just by Grammy-winning performances and powerful worship moments, but also by public struggles, controversy, and brushes with the law. And for those who have followed her career closely, the story of her latest arrest fit into a troubling cycle that has been unfolding for a long time. Leandria's rise to fame had been nothing short of dramatic. She burst onto the scene as the winner of Sunday Best, instantly capturing hearts with her raw, unpolished vocals and her testimony of overcoming hardship. She wasn't polished like many other gospel singers, and that was exactly why people loved her. She was real. She sang with a kind of grit that came from living through pain. But even as her career skyrocketed, the cracks in her personal life began to show. She was open about her struggles with alcohol, her battles with depression, and her frustration with the expectations placed on her as a gospel artist. That openness made her relatable, but it also made her vulnerable. It wasn't long before those private struggles spilled into the public eye. Fans remember the viral live videos where Leandria would go on unscripted rants, cursing while talking about church politics or criticizing the very gospel industry that had elevated her. While some admired her honesty, others were disturbed by it. Her rawness, which once felt refreshing, started to look like self-destruction. Every outburst chipped away at the image of a gospel star who was supposed to embody discipline and grace. Still, many supporters gave her grace, hoping she would find her footing. Then came the arrests. Each one carried its own story, but together they painted a picture of someone caught in a loop. One arrest was tied to driving under the influence. Another came after confrontations that escalated too far. Each time, she would issue some kind of explanation, sometimes apologizing, sometimes defiantly standing her ground. And each time, fans found themselves torn between disappointment and compassion. It wasn't easy to watch someone with so much talent and potential keep tripping over the same stumbling blocks. What made the pattern so painful was how closely it reflected the themes in her music. Leandria's songs were always about redemption, about finding light in the darkest places, about fighting through struggles with faith intact. People believed her because she had lived it. Yet, watching her life spiral again and again made some wonder if the redemption she sang about was slipping further and further out of her reach. Her story felt like a tug-of-war between triumph and tragedy, with the outcome never certain. Behind each arrest was a woman trying to balance the crushing weight of fame with the realities of her personal struggles. Being in the gospel world didn't make things easier, it made them harder. Expectations were high, and judgment was swift. A pop star might have gotten away with the same behavior, brushing it off as celebrity drama, but for a gospel singer, every mistake felt magnified. Fans didn't just see her as an artist, they saw her as a minister, a representative of faith. When she stumbled, it wasn't just about her, it was about the message she carried. That double standard left her with little room to make mistakes, and every slip was amplified into a scandal. Over time, the arrests and controversies created a shadow over her career. Concert promoters hesitated, churches second-guessed inviting her, and headlines focused more on her missteps than her music. Yet despite it all, she kept coming back. She would sing again, record again, testify again, as if each comeback was proof that she still had something left to give. And fans, even the disappointed ones, couldn't look away, because if Leandria taught anyone anything, it was that brokenness doesn't erase calling. Her voice was too powerful, too unique to be forgotten. Still, the cycle remained. Arrests, apologies, comebacks, and then more trouble. It became almost predictable, the kind of pattern that broke people's hearts because they could see the storm before it hit. Some fans grew weary, saying they couldn't keep supporting someone who wouldn't change. Others prayed harder for her, believing that one day she would break free from the cycle for good. But wherever people stood, no one could deny that Leandria's troubles had become part of her story, just as much as her music had. Her latest arrest didn't happen in a vacuum. It carried with it the weight of all the ones that came before, each one reminding the world that the battle she was fighting wasn't over. Whether it was demons of addiction, the pressure of fame, or the wounds of her past, something kept pulling her back into chaos. And unless that cycle is broken, the story will only keep repeating. For now, all anyone can do is watch and wonder if this latest chapter will finally be the turning point, or just another part of the same pattern that has haunted her for years. When news of Leandria Johnson's latest arrest hit the headlines, the reaction from fans was immediate and intense. Social media lit up within minutes, with her name trending across platforms. For some, it was pure disbelief. They typed comments filled with shock, asking how someone with her incredible gift could keep finding herself in these kinds of situations. Others weren't surprised at all. They sighed and shook their heads, saying this was just another chapter in a story they'd seen unfold too many times before. The reaction was not one-sided. In fact, it split her fan base right down the middle. On one side, there were those who stood firmly by her, offering prayers, encouragement, and words of hope. They reminded everyone that Leandria had never claimed to be perfect. From the beginning, her whole appeal had been that she was raw and real, not polished like so many others in the gospel world. To them, her flaws didn't disqualify her. Instead, they made her human. "She's still anointed," one fan wrote. "God isn't done with her yet." Comments like that flooded timelines, painting a picture of a fan base that wasn't ready to let her go. But on the other side, the disappointment was hard to ignore. Many felt betrayed, not just as fans of her music, but as people who had looked up to her as a spiritual example. Gospel singers aren't like pop stars. They aren't just entertainers. They're leaders, ministers, messengers of faith. And when one of them stumbles, the disappointment cuts deeper. Some fans admitted they could no longer listen to her songs without thinking of her mistake. "It's hard to take her words seriously now," one comment read. Others expressed anger, saying they had defended her in the past, only to feel let down again. The most painful reactions came from those caught in the middle. These were fans who loved her voice, her testimony, and her story, but who also felt the weight of her repeated troubles. They didn't want to abandon her, but they struggled with the constant cycle of scandal and redemption. Each time they hoped it would be the last, that she would finally rise above it all. but each arrest chipped away at that hope. Some admitted that supporting her had become exhausting, like being in a relationship where the same mistakes keep happening. Church communities felt this tension even more strongly. In many congregations, Leandria's songs had become staples of worship services. Her voice had been a source of comfort in funerals, revivals, and Sunday mornings. To see her life spiral into controversy left pastors and church leaders with tough decisions. Should they still play her music? Should they invite her to sing again if she asked? Some chose to stand by her, saying that the message of grace was bigger than her mistakes. Others quietly distanced themselves, deciding it was too risky to tie their ministries to someone whose personal life was so unstable. The media coverage only fueled the reactions. Headlines emphasized the word "again," making the arrest feel like part of a never-ending loop. Talk shows and blogs debated her future, and each story reached her fans with a slightly different angle. Some stories focused on her talent and the tragedy of wasted potential. Others highlighted her history of struggles and questioned if she would ever change. Fans reading these takes couldn't help but form their own opinions, and the debate spilled into comment sections, turning into heated arguments between supporters and critics. For some fans, the disappointment wasn't just about her, it was about themselves. They felt like they had invested in her journey, defended her against critics, and shared her songs as testimonies of faith. To see her arrested again felt personal, like their trust had been broken. For others, the reaction was more forgiving. They reminded everyone that gospel music had always been about broken people finding grace. And if Leandria was still struggling, maybe that just made her story even more real. "She's a work in progress," one supporter wrote. "So are we all." In the days following the arrest, YouTube videos and Facebook Lives popped up from fans and commentators analyzing what had happened. Some prayed over her name, asking God to deliver her from the battle she was clearly fighting. Others delivered harsh critiques, saying she was a hypocrite who had squandered her blessings. The divide between these groups was stark, but it also revealed just how much people cared. If no one cared, there would be silence. Instead, the noise was deafening. What stood out most in the fan reaction was the emotional weight behind it. This wasn't casual celebrity gossip. It was a spiritual struggle played out in public. Fans weren't just reacting to an entertainer. They were reacting to someone who had sung over their lives, who had been the soundtrack to their prayers and their breakthroughs. That's why the reaction was so passionate, so divided, and so raw. To some, she was still the vessel God had chosen, even if she was broken. To others, she was a fallen star, who needed to step back and deal with her demons before standing on another stage. In the end, the fans' reaction showed both the beauty and the burden of being a gospel singer. Unlike other artists, Leandria's life and message were tied together, and every mistake echoed louder than the last. For now, the reaction remains split. Some are holding on, believing in her redemption. Others have let go, tired of the pattern. But no matter where they stand, one thing is clear. People are still watching, still talking, and still waiting to see what happens next. Nobody can say for sure what the future holds for Leandria Johnson, but one thing is certain. Her story is far from over. Every time she's stumbled, she has managed to get back up again, even when the odds were stacked against her. That resilience is part of what makes people keep watching. They want to know what comes next, whether she'll finally break free from the cycle of trouble or fall deeper into it. And the truth is, the answer will likely be a mix of both. Struggles and triumphs, setbacks and comebacks, just like her life has always been. Right now, the biggest question surrounding her is whether she can rebuild her image after yet another arrest. In the gospel industry, credibility matters almost as much as talent. Fans look to singers not only for entertainment but also for spiritual guidance, inspiration, and strength. When someone like Leandria gets caught up in scandal after scandal, it shakes people's faith in her. Some will never come back, no matter what she does. But others are waiting for her to turn the page, to show that this time is truly different. What comes next depends on whether she can find the balance between being real about her struggles and being responsible with the platform she's been given. There are a few different paths she could take. One path is redemption. Leandria has been open in the past about her struggles with addiction, with anger, and with the pressures of fame. If she chooses to confront those issues fully and without excuses, she could rebuild trust. Imagine her standing on stage, raw and vulnerable, not pretending to be perfect, but showing how God works even through brokenness. That kind of testimony could be more powerful than any album. It could reach people who feel too far gone, people who think grace doesn't apply to them. Her future could be about turning her pain into a platform for healing, not just for herself, but for others too. But there's also the darker possibility. Fame has a way of pulling people in opposite directions. The spotlight can be addictive, and so can the lifestyle that comes with it. If Leandria doesn't take time to heal and truly change, she risks repeating the same mistakes again and again. Another arrest, another scandal, another round of disappointment. If that cycle continues, her career could crumble beyond repair. Gospel music is full of talented voices, and while hers is unique, even the most loyal fans eventually get tired of chaos. If she can't break the pattern, she might find herself remembered more for her troubles than for her songs. Still, her story has always been unpredictable. When she first won Sunday Best, nobody expected her to shake the gospel world the way she did. Her voice, her honesty, her refusal to sugarcoat, those things made her stand out. Even her controversies set her apart, because unlike other polished gospel stars, she never tried to hide who she was. What comes next could be another surprise. Maybe she'll release an album that silences all the critics. Maybe she'll take a step back from music for a while and focus on personal growth. Or maybe she'll reinvent herself completely, showing a side the world hasn't seen before. Her fans also play a big role in what happens next. Despite everything, many of them are still here. They're praying for her, defending her, hoping she'll rise again. The loyalty of that core group could give her the space to recover. If she leans on them, if she lets them see her process instead of hiding it, she could turn her supporters into her strongest allies. Transparency could be the key. If she chooses to go silent, to pretend nothing happened, the gap between her and her audience will only grow wider. But if she opens up, even in messy, imperfect ways, she could draw people closer than ever before. The church world, too, has a decision to make. For years, churches have embraced Leandria's music because of the power behind it. Songs like hers carry weight in worship, no matter what she's going through. But after another arrest, pastors and leaders will have to ask themselves if they can still put her on stage, still invite her into pulpits, still let her lead congregations in song. Some will choose grace, saying everyone deserves another chance. Others will choose caution, deciding it's too risky. The way the church responds will shape her next chapter, just as much as her own choices will. Another question is whether Leandria herself is ready to face the deeper issues that keep pulling her down. Arrests don't happen in a vacuum. They're usually symptoms of pain, stress, or unresolved struggles boiling over. If she surrounds herself with the right people, mentors, counselors, true friends who tell her the truth instead of just what she wants to hear, she could finally get the stability she needs. But if she keeps leaning on enablers, people who excuse everything or push her back into the same situations, then the cycle will keep spinning. Her next chapter depends heavily on who she lets into her inner circle. What comes next also involves the broader gospel music industry. Leandria isn't just any singer. She's a Grammy-winning, powerhouse vocalist with a reputation for raw, soul-shaking performances. The industry knows her worth. Even with the scandals, labels and promoters may still see dollar signs when they think of her name. The question is whether they'll take the risk of working with her again. Some might step back, waiting to see if she stabilizes. Others might step forward, hoping to cash in on her comeback story. Either way, the industry will watch closely, because how Leandria handles this moment could set the tone for the rest of her career. There's also the personal side of the story. Beyond the music, beyond the headlines, there's a woman who has been through a lot. Divorce, addiction, loss, public criticism. Her life has never been easy. What comes next could be about more than music. It could be about healing, about finally finding peace outside of the stage lights. Maybe she'll spend more time with family. Maybe she'll write about her journey. Maybe she'll step into a new kind of ministry that doesn't rely on fame. For someone like Leandria, whose gift is both a blessing and a burden, the future might be less about chasing success and more about surviving with her spirit intact. Fans, critics, and the gospel world will all keep asking the same question: can she rise again? And the truth is, Leandria's story is uniquely positioned for a comeback. People love redemption stories. They love to see someone who was counted out find their way back. If she can face her flaws head-on, own her mistakes, and show growth, then her comeback could be bigger than anything she's done before. Imagine her releasing an album full of songs about survival, grace, and second chances. It would resonate not just because of the music, but because everyone knows she's lived it. But for now, the next steps are uncertain. What comes next for Landria Johnson depends on choices she hasn't made yet, battles she hasn't fought yet, and moments that haven't happened yet. She's at a crossroads, and whichever road she takes will define her legacy. Will she be remembered as the gospel singer who couldn't outrun her troubles? Or as the woman who fell, got back up, and used her story to inspire millions? That's the question only time will answer. For those who love her, the hope is simple. They want to see her free. Free from the mistakes, free from the chaos, free to use her voice the way it was meant to be used. They're waiting for her next move, praying it's one that leads to healing and not more heartbreak. For her critics, the skepticism will always remain, but even they are watching, curious if she'll prove them wrong. And for Landria herself, what comes next might be the most important chapter of all, because it's not just about her career anymore, it's about her life, her faith, and her future.